we go! Here we go! Here we go!
We're gonna have a fiery Sterling today.
Well, no, you just have a big old air horn, and anytime a Packers fan tries to talk, you just hit the button and drown them out. Like, no, I can't hear you. Go Bears.
It's basically the la 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 la.
Yeah, exactly. Right? You don't even have to live there. You can do it from here. Just remote control everything. Yeah, I'm pissed off, man. Fuck the NFL at this point.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the OneIQ Football Talk podcast. Brendan and Sterling coming at you with another week of football talk. And it's very weird now because most of OTAs are done. Most of the training or the rookie minicap stuff is done. And it's now just kind of like this 6 weeks of just kind of nothingness in the NFL world. I know for the last few weeks we've been saying like, oh, we're kind of getting into this dead zone, but we are now kind of in the middle of like the Sahara Desert. Like it is legitimately dead zone with no, oasis to see. But how you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. And I mean, even with us being in that dead zone, at least we've been getting some sporadic drops of information here and there, a couple of contract extensions this week and things like that. And so there's still stuff going on, which is nice to see because usually the month of June is just complete radio silence on everything unless you like deep dive follow your team and you're like following the players on their social medias to see who they're hanging out with. That's kind of the only info you get because that's what it is. Between those mandatory camps and the actual training camp starting, it really is just get to know your teammates and spend some time together, build that chemistry type of deal while you're working out in the gym and shit like that.
Yeah, it's who's
Other than
going
that,
on vacation with who, that type of stuff.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. But no, I mean, good otherwise, just been chilling, enjoying the nice weather finally.
Yeah, thank goodness that it's finally here, but we might be getting some rain in the upcoming days, but not to worry. But yeah, speaking of some of that like sprinkled in information, obviously we over the last couple weeks we've kind of gone over our fantasy stuff, but we're not really going to go over your special teams and your defenses, or your kicker and your defenses, because those are really just toss-ups. But we have some stuff that we'll talk about a little bit later in the podcast. But one of the big things that was announced this week was the signing of Justin Jefferson. We all knew that the Vikings were working very diligently to get Justin Jefferson signed, and even you and I were talking last week about Justin Jefferson being signed on, and like what type of deal that he was going to get. And boy, oh boy, he signed a big one. 4 years, $140 million, 110 fully guaranteed, or pardon me, 110 guaranteed for practice purposes, and 88.7 fully guaranteed at signing, and 35 million per year. Justin Jefferson becomes the highest non-paid QB in NFL history at 25 years old.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. I mean, we knew he was going to get paid. We knew it was going to be a hefty value. Luckily, that contract doesn't kick in for a couple more years for them. They've got him, under that lower cap for the next two, and then after that, it just goes through the roof. And those last couple of years they're going to be interesting. Like that, it feels to me like that they're really going to have to sweet talk him in those last 2 years into extending the contract with minimal money so that they can restructure it to bring that cap hit lower. So he's still going to get that money. It's just going to be less year to year because that final year at $47 million.
That's 14% of the cap space on the Vikings.
Well, exactly. Even with the projected increases of salary cap space, that's still going to be a hefty hit. And by that point, if JJ McCarthy pans out to be something good, that's going to be the point where they're going to have to be paying him. And so it's it's going to be interesting. You know, I said it last week with these non-quarterbacks getting big contracts that you're kind of looking at them going, you're making a choice for yourself and your team. You're saying, I want the money, not a Super Bowl. You know, and that's what this contract feels to me. It's like, yeah, Justin Jefferson getting paid. He's gonna, you know, be probably one of the most highest earning wide receivers in history, but he likely won't walk away with Super Bowl ring.
Yeah, see, for me, I'm happier that position players are getting paid, like your more skilled position guys. I
Mhm.
always think the quarterback, even though it's the most important position in football and in sports, I always look at the quarterbacks and I go, if you want to walk away with not just one but multiple Super Bowl rings,
Mhm.
you typically got to be the guy that says, you know what, I'll take a little bit less so that my guys can get more, because that way we can have these really super talented guys. Like we always look at Tom Brady. What Tom Brady did for years and years and years and years. He was still making generational wealth at
Yeah.
his position. But the fact that the team always had relatively low salary cap for Tom Brady meant that they could bring in a bunch of really good players. And so for me, I look at this and I go, if JJ come 4 years from now, when you know his contract is going to have to be at least talked about, or at least 3, I guess technically 3 years from now, if JJ looks at this and goes, okay, I want to keep Justin Jefferson because he is still the best receiver in football. Again, we're looking 3 years down the road, but he goes, you know what, if that means I have to take a little bit less on my contract, like
Mhm.
this is one of those weird things that I'm looking at for some of these guys, where I look at it and go, okay, I understand that you want to be paid handsomely for what you do, and you want to be necessarily paid more than, let's say, this guy because you feel that you're better than this guy. Lord knows how Daniel Jones convinced anyone he was better than anyone at
Anyway.
$45 million per year. Was
Mhm.
beyond. I want that guy to negotiate my contracts for the rest of my life. But yeah, like I understand that, but I also look at it and go, everyone knows the formula for success. We see Patrick Mahomes,
Mhm.
and you know he's kind of the only outlier that has really been with the big contract. But even then, I don't think Patrick Mahomes is still making a crazy amount if I just look up his contract. But it's still one of those things where if you at least have like a fair amount of money saved from your quarterback, you're allowed to do these things with it. And again, I kind of look at the Vikings and I go, since they do have the rookie quarterback, it does kind of make it a little bit easier because they do have that. And if you're going to spend $140 million on a wide receiver, it should be when you have a rookie quarterback. Like, I get that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right, 100% right. And this was the best move for Justin Jefferson. It made sense for the Vikings. They weren't going to be able to lock him up otherwise. And yeah, like if McCarthy pans out and he's good and he's hitting Justin Jefferson and they're breaking records, then I don't doubt that even Justin Jefferson, when that JJ McCarthy contract rolls around, goes, okay, he's willing to take less. So yes, let's restructure my contract so there's a little less so we can get one more piece in here and win a championship. Then 100% it makes sense. So, yeah, you're right. In the long run, if things get restructured and everything, all those pieces fall into place properly for the Vikings, then I will be wrong and they could win a championship for sure. It's just as it stands right now, I look at it and go, okay, well, you know, it's good for you. If things don't work out, you're not winning a title
Yeah.
is sort of the way it is. But I mean, I guess me saying that, you could say that for 28 of the 32 teams in the league over the next 4 years,
Yeah, honestly,
right?
it's well, you could arguably make that argument with pretty much 31 out of the 32
Yeah,
teams,
yeah,
because it's Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs versus everyone else, because
yeah.
it almost seems like every other year we're talking about who's the number 2 quarterback. At least the last couple years it's been pretty easy to say that it's Joe Burrow, but even then that's going to come into question this year pretty heavily if he is unable to stay healthy. And
Yeah.
there's a bunch of different stuff like that, but the one thing that has been guaranteed pretty much ever since 2019 was Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. And
Yeah. And did you pull up that contract too? Because I do believe he was one of the ones that did take a tiny bit less of that yearly salary to be able to afford guys like Travis Kelce and stuff going forward.
the deal
And
isn't as good as I initially thought. They're like
no,
the next few years for the Chiefs, he's going to be into like the 24% of the cap for the
yeah,
team, but the last 2 or 3 years on the deal, he's back to like 10% of the cap space, which means that in some of those later years, it's going to be really, really beneficial for the Chiefs because he's only making 10% of the cap. And again, we with the cap going up and up and up every single year, and who knows in 6 years where the cap's going to be. We could have a $300 million cap space, and all of a sudden that Mahomes deal looks brilliant for both sides. And
yeah,
so,
and again, with the restructuring that we see happen around the league too, like we could see that some of that get pushed back year here, a year there, things like that. And I did see an interesting comment out of our offensive rookie of the year last year in CJ Stroud in talking about Tom Brady specifically and saying what he did and how that's exactly what he looks to do is he's hoping that this Texans team can keep putting talent around him and he's willing to make less if it means he can fill that hand with rings.
yeah.
Which is what I love to see in those young guys because so many of them come in and they just go, "No, I just want to be the highest paid at my position. I want to break records that way in how much I'm making instead of winning championships."
Well, even Caleb Williams, as he hasn't
Mhm.
even played it down in football yet, one of the biggest things he says, I want to be, you know, remembered forever. Like I want to be recorded in history, and that's by winning rings. You
Yep.
got to be able to be on the table with Tom Brady if you want to be there forever. And
Yep.
no one's really going to talk about you 15 years from now if you were the highest paid contract. Because again, in 15 years, we're going to look at this Justin Jefferson contract. We're probably not going to be talking all that much about it because it's going to be broken time and time and time and time again. There's going to be a guy in 15 years that's going to be getting like a $250 million contract as a wide receiver, and we're probably going to be sitting back at that point going like, well, like we're going to be having the same conversation. But
Well, exactly. Like we talk now about the final year of that deal being 47 million. In 15 years, the first year of these deals are likely going to be in that $45 million range.
yeah, the
So,
the first overall pick in 15 years is going to be given $100 million guaranteed, and we're going to be
yeah.
going like, that's a pretty good deal for a rookie quarterback, and we're just going to, yeah. But not only was Justin Jefferson signed this week, Christian McCaffrey was also re-signed on a
Yep.
newer deal or extended, with a year and a half after he signed a 2-year, $38 million extension with a fully guaranteed of $24 million. The deal adds $4 million cash to his 2024 and 2025 compensation, lowering his cap hit by more than $7.4 million, which I think is really good moves by the 49ers, saying we're going to lock up the best running back in football and lower his cap hit while still giving him a buttload of money. I will say in the year 2027, his cap hit is going to be $25.3 million, which for a running back, I don't love, especially at the age of 31, but it is
Yep.
Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. That is the age 31. And we don't see a lot of running backs anymore go too far past the age 30. And
28
so
seems to be a really big year. If they can make it past 28 and still look good, they can make it a few more years. But if they have a
yeah.
rough 28-year-old season, then it's pretty down the
Yeah.
hill from there.
Exactly. But no, that was a good move, and the fact that it did bring his cap hit down over the next 2 seasons does increase the possibility of them maybe being able to re-sign Brandon Ayuk to a contract. But even then, I still don't think they're going to have enough cap space available to give Ayuk the contract he really wants. And so, unless he's willing to give that sort of hometown discount to the 49ers to stick with them, I don't know if that's going to be quite enough to keep Ayuk around beyond this season.
Well, not only that, but they are going to seriously have to look at not this offseason, but next offseason Brock Purdy, because he being a seventh round pick only has the 4 years. And so they don't have that fifth year option that they can lay on Brock Purdy to just get that little bit of extra time. It's going like, okay, like this is year number 3 for the 49ers. They are going to have to seriously make some big time decisions, and
Mhm.
if Brock Purdy plays like he did last year, you're going to have to look at that and kind of say like, okay, like it's worth it for him to be there. But the one thing that I will say about the 49ers is they did draft a wide receiver in the first round this year, Ricky Pearsall. So it's not like they're going to be instantly losing out on a guy, and like he is a talented wide receiver. I don't think he's anywhere near as good as Brandon Ayuk, because not many guys are, because he's a top 10 wide receiver in my opinion. But it is one of those things where it's like, okay, like there's going to be some big money decisions being made here soon.
Oh yeah, well, and I mean that's not to say that Pearsall in 2 years isn't going to be that good. You know,
Yep.
that's just it. It's rare a rookie is going to come in and be as good as a top 10 guy. Very, very rare, especially in some of those skill positions, because those skill players tend to just get better and better and better until their very late 20s.
It's very rare that we see a Jamar Chase come in and produce like what Jamar Chase did in his rookie season. But yes,
Well, yeah,
it's
and I think if Jamar Chase had been catching passes from somebody other than Joe Burrow, I don't think his numbers would have been as good.
uh,
I think that chemistry definitely helped him look better than he would have on any other team.
oh, without a
He's
doubt,
still
the chemistry right there was still
Mhm.
great, and I know exactly what you're going to say there. He's still a great wide receiver, but again, the
Yeah,
chemistry helps without a doubt. But even then, let's just say the chemistry wasn't there, and he got 300 less yards, we would still be looking at that going like, damn, he played almost like a top 10 wide receiver,
yeah,
and
oh,
it's
100%.
but yeah, it's very interesting to see what the 49ers are going to do with Brandon Ayuk. They might this is one of those weird things where you're a team that is Super Bowl caliber, and we all think
Mhm.
the 49ers are a Super Bowl caliber team, and one of the weirdest things to kind of look at with this roster is going, if you have a guy like Brandon Ayuk, you can't just let him walk away for nothing, because
Yeah.
that would seem like a very foolish move. But if you're also a team that's in your Super Bowl window, you might just have to have that situation of where you go to the Super Bowl and then he just walks away for nothing. And that's why I think the 49ers did ultimately draft Ricky Pearson.
Mhm.
Just because that is one of those things where it's kind of like, we know we're not going to be able to give him the contract, but we don't want to lose him because we're also in the Super Bowl window. So we're just gonna have to kind of let it walk away, which is one of the worst things you can kind of say in those moments. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's tough, and I mean, it's a big gamble as well, because that's just it. If you go that route and you win the Super Bowl, then that is successful in my opinion at that point.
yes,
If you don't win the Super Bowl and he walks away, that is a problem.
yep,
And with how good Ayuk is, like I really think the best option for the 49ers is if they can find a dance partner, it's moving Debo Samuel somewhere else. Because yes, Debo Samuel is also a phenomenal wide receiver. He's very electric. He's really diverse in what he can do as well. You know, he can catch out of the backfield as well as slot, wide out, everything. But I just feel like Ayuk has more of an upside right now. And if you can find a trade partner for Debo Samuel and move on from him and then give that contract to Brandon Ayuk instead, that is the best situation that the 49ers can find themselves in. The tough thing is anybody going to want to take a Debo Samuel contract where he's making 28 and 24 million dollars a year over the next couple of years?
Oh, without a doubt, there's going to be a team that would love to take Debo Samuel, but I completely agree with you in that Debo Samuel is more of your gadget kind of explosive player, and you can use him in a lot of different ways, while Brandon Ayuk is your more traditional superstar wide receiver. Now,
Mhm.
and in the long run, you want to have those super talented wide receivers as opposed to the kind of more gadget players. I would say they're probably on par with their importance onto the team, but in the future, I would definitely rather go with a Brandon Ayuk over a Debo Samuel. But
Well,
yeah,
and with the 49ers, because you've got Christian McCaffrey, who can already do a lot of that gadget sort of stuff out of the backfield. He can also be a slot receiver. Like, you've already got that in what is now, with that new contract, the number one paid running back in the league. And so moving on from Debo is the best possible solution. And there are teams out there that I think Debo Samuel could go to, and it would just make those teams instantly so much better. And the one that comes to mind first and foremost is the Raiders. Could you imagine him going to the Raiders with Devonte Adams and their questionable quarterback play, sure, but Debo being able to be that gadget player that can help out a young, inexperienced quarterback, as we saw in that first year with Brock Purdy. And that could be a great thing. It's just, I think the 49ers are going to expect to get at least multiple picks, if not a first rounder, for either of those wide receivers, really.
well, yeah, I think they're expecting a first round pick and an additional pick after that, whether that's a third, fourth round pick. I look at like this: if you're a team that is looking to trade for a Brandon Ayuk or a what for all for
Debo Samuel.
thank you. I wanted to say something
Mhm.
else, but yeah, brain fart. Caffeine hasn't kicked in yet. It's I like if I was a team that needed a wide receiver and needed to go out there and find someone, I would be happy going after a Debo Samuel because he is unbelievably talented. And I like
Mhm.
your Raiders spot. I would look at the Steelers as being another team that would kind of go down that route. I also look at a team like the Jets, for instance, that have a Garrett Wilson that are just trying to get that little bit extra. And again, opposite side of the country in a completely different division. The only place you're really going to have to worry about them if you're San Francisco is the Super Bowl. But at that point, you just have to hope. And, there are teams like that. And maybe the Texans might just say, you know what, we don't want Stephon Diggs anymore, and we're willing to take that little bit of a cap hit for these next couple years to get that super talented guy with our young talented quarterback. Hell, we could be talking about the Chiefs over this time period, just going like, hey, yeah, we'll take them. We'll send you a
That,
first and a third.
that's the only one I think the 49ers would shut the door on in an AFC team and be like, not happening. No way in hell. You don't get any of our players unless you give us Patrick Mahomes. Just because that is ultimately the only hurdle that the 49ers cannot overcome right now to win themselves a championship.
Yeah.
It's that Chiefs team. But yeah, you mentioning the Steelers, I would love that. Now that we're post this year's draft and we got more pieces that we need in Pittsburgh, I am more than happy looking at next year and going, we could part with a first round pick next year. We've got a lot of good pieces in place. I would give up next year's first round pick and a third to get a guy like Brandon Ayuk or even Debo Samuel right now, because ultimately that is one of the top two positions of need in Pittsburgh. It's that wide receiver spot or the defensive backs, but there's a lot of youth there that we don't know what's going to come from. It really is finding somebody that can complement George Pickens and take some of the attention away from Pickens. That's the big thing right now. and either of those guys would be excellent there. So yeah, I would definitely be willing to see that sort of a trade get made
The
for
only
Pittsburgh.
question that I would have with Pittsburgh with giving away that first round pick is that if you give away that first round pick and Russell Wilson is what we've seen Russell Wilson be the last couple of years, which has been bad, and then you throw Justin Fields out there and he just isn't it, then
Mhm.
it becomes a big question of like, okay, great, you got a bunch of weapons, but you got no quarterback to deliver the ball. And would you be willing to go after a Dak Prescott in next year's offseason type situation if he became available?
I think that's that would be what Omar Khan would be looking at. And for me, yes, Russell Wilson hasn't been super impressive the last couple of years. Yes, Justin Fields has struggled. But if either of them even just replicate what they did last year, the Steelers are going to finish with a similar or better record than they did last year, this year, which means they're likely not going to have a high enough draft pick in the first round to take one of those first round quarterbacks anyway,
True.
unless it's another Kenny Pickett situation where it's, the quarterbacks fall and it's like, well, he's the best of the worst, so let's take him. But I think Pittsburgh's going to be wary of that now. I think they're going to look at it and go, unless we are 100% sure that is our guy, we're not going after a quarterback in the late first round anymore. I think unless they're finishing in the, getting that top 12 pick, I think they're going to be a little more gun shy on it. And really, I don't see them finishing there next year because of the fact that we've improved in that position and our defense is still one of the best in the league.
Oh, I hear you. And again, it for me, I'm just always worried some about teams that lack their true quarterback and trying to do a little bit more. But you already know
I
that.
understand that, but we talked about Pittsburgh at length, and that's the thing with them is they're not going to look to next year and 2 years from now. They're not going to go, okay, what are we going to do then to win? Because the mentality in Pittsburgh is always win
It's always
now.
now. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not we're planning for 2 years from now, and so they're not going to go into it going, well, we don't want to give away our first round pick in case we get a top 10 pick
Yeah.
because they never want to have a top 10 pick.
The Steelers' philosophy is we're going to be really good in the regular season, and then we're going to get eliminated in the wild card round.
Yeah, for the last 8 years, that's pretty much been it. But
Yeah.
that's a hump. At least we make the playoffs. There's a lot of teams that don't even get there.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
it's just getting over that hump. We'll see what happens.
We all know my frustration with that though, and we're
Hey, if you've watched any of the OTA stuff, you've got to be happy with the fact that there is a lot of discussion going on now that Justin Fields has been impressing, and he may be in line to take that starting role come week 1.
yeah,
You know that.
like I've been saying for a long time. The second that the Steelers
Mhm.
traded for Justin Fields, I said you name him the starting quarterback day one. If Russell Wilson gets pissy with that, okay, take your $1.25 million and fuck off. Like
Yep.
to me, like I want Justin to succeed in Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
I do.
So do I.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
I think he will.
yeah, it's just I got to take my shots at you when I can, especially
Exactly.
after the thing that you sent me this morning, which was blasphemy. If this was in person, I would have hit you. I would have hit you.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was
This
fucking funny.
this guy right here sends me a picture of Caleb Williams in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform, and I almost drove to his house to hit him.
I mean, it's not my fault that everybody just looks better in the black and gold, man.
he looks.
Oh, if you could reach through the screen.
Yeah, there would definitely be some hitting going on, but
Right.
yeah,
But yeah, like no, I get you. You got to take your shots, and so some other interesting news did come out about Pittsburgh this week, and that Russell Wilson contract as well. A very rare occurrence with a veteran minimum contract. There's a no trade clause in that contract. Yeah. And I think that was why Russell Wilson agreed to sign it. Was ultimately he wanted that no trade clause so that he could say, "Hey, either you're starting me or you're cutting me so that I can go find somewhere else to play that I want to play instead of you being able to trade me away for something and trade me somewhere that I don't want to be for a season. Because he's older and he still thinks he's got enough in the tank that he can help a team reach the playoffs at the very least, if not win a championship. And so I can respect that Pittsburgh looked at that and were like, well, nobody else is going to offer you this, so we'll give it to you. And I think that's why they went out and made that trade for Justin Fields, because they were like, if it doesn't work, we're just going to cut Russ, we're going to roll with Justin, and we're going to move from there.
Yeah, and I think when you first said that no trades clause, that kind of puts a monkey into your wrench a little bit.
It
kind
does.
of what you had planned for a little bit, but yeah, again with just how cheap that contract is, it really doesn't matter. You could look
No.
at him week 1, he throws one pass and it goes one interception. You could bring him to the sideline and says, "Hey, after this game's done, you're cut. Take your 1.2 million and go away. Justin, go out there and please, for the love of God, show something."
Right.
And it's as much as I criticize the Russell Wilson move, the deal that they gave him, to the point it makes it to the point where if he's bad, you're going, okay, well, we're paying 1.2 million. Who cares?
Right.
And if he's good, you're like, well, guess what? We paid him 1.2 million dollars to be average. I don't think he's going to be great. I don't think he's going to be a top 15 quarterback, but it's who knows? But you didn't have a top 25 quarterback last year, and you made it to the playoffs. But
that is exactly my point. Is if he can be better than Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky were last year, then we're golden.
Not high bars to set. Not a high
Right?
bar.
Like as long as he doesn't trip over his laces, he should surpass that bar.
Which,
like, holy crap.
You are now kind of in that world that Bears fans have been in pretty much the entire existence of, just like this quarterback purgatory of where it's kind of, there's no real knowledge of what the quarterback situation was going to be. Once Ben retired, it was like, okay, the Hall of Famer is gone. He's retired. We're drafting this kid in the first round. We're hoping that he can translate into something more than what he was. It wasn't a great quarterback class. Pretty much every quarterback in that class, with the exception of Mr. Irrelevant, has turned out to be essentially a bust, or just been bad enough to the point where it's not even talking about.
They've already been replaced, essentially.
Exactly. And now it's the bringing in of the old veteran that is one time was a top 5 quarterback, but the last, I would arguably say 3 seasons, that last year with the Seahawks wasn't great as well, but it's been kind of one of those things where it's just been like that. And then you also get the young guy who got booted from his team for the younger model that looked a lot prettier. So it's the Steelers are kind of in this weird QB purgatory of just not really knowing.
A little bit, yeah. And I mean that's really common in the NFL, though.
Oh, it is.
Like
It's
hard to find your guy. Between our TB12 and Ben Roethlisberger, that's basically what it was. After Bradshaw, it was, who's our next guy? Who's going to take us to the promised land again? And it was, guy after guy after guy until we, landed on Ben Roethlisberger and caught lightning in a bottle.
Yep.
Because that's really what it is. Finding a quarterback that is going to be able to perennially win you enough games to get to the playoffs and get you to conference championships and win you Super Bowls, it is like catching lightning in a bottle. It is very difficult to do. And so, yeah, we're in that spot right now. And I'm still very disappointed in Roethlisberger for those last few years of his season or his career, when we drafted Mason Rudolph with the intent of him being the successor if Ben could take him under his wing, and he just refused. And seeing some of the flashes that Rudolph has had over the couple of seasons he did play when he had opportunities, there was promise there. He did have skill and talent. Even last year, end of the year, he's the guy that they turned to, and he was better than any quarterback we had all season. He was putting up yards, he was completing passes, he was moving the ball, he was converting third downs, and it's so disappointing because that is the model that Pittsburgh wanted to use of the veteran teaching the young guy, so the veteran can retire into the sunset and the young guy can take over and keep that tradition going. And it's funny now because Ben is always on his podcast talking about the Pittsburgh traditions and how these young guys, he doesn't know if they really understand it or can appreciate it. And it's like, dude, that is your fault. It was your job to pass that on to the next generation, and you dropped the fucking ball.
Yeah.
And so that's disappointing. And it feels like that's sort of what ownership is doing in Pittsburgh. They're like, okay, let's hit the reset button, go back 5 years. We've got a veteran who used to be a top 5, is a borderline top 15 to 20 right now, and with the right weapons around him, could get into that top 12 range possibly, with a perfect situation. And then we've got the young guy behind him that can learn, which Justin Fields has even come out and said a few times already that he's having a blast behind Russell Wilson because he's learning so much from him, which is so good to hear. Because that was just we need Justin Fields to learn more to be successful like you and I both want him to be. Because there were some red flags and some doubts in his game, especially in his decision making. And
Oh
if
my God, his
any
decision
quarterback in the last
making.
15 years has been really good at making those split second decisions, it has been Russ. Even when he's throwing the ball away, it's good decisions that he's making because it's take a 15-yard sack because I've scrambled so much, or get the ball out and go for 3rd and 10 instead of 3rd and 22.
Yeah.
So if he's teaching that sort of stuff to Justin Fields, that just bodes well for the future of both Fields and the Steelers.
Again, like I very much hope for Fields that he finds success with
Mhm.
the Steelers, because again, the Bears situation that he was dropped into was a horrific one. It was a general manager and a head coach doing a last ditch effort to try to save their job. They ultimately get fired, and thank God the Bears found a guy that said, this standard that you guys have constantly kept going through these last 20 years isn't good enough. I'm changing it. We're going to be bad, and unfortunately to your new shiny toy that everyone likes, he's not going to be in a good position. And he just so happened to find a lottery ticket that gave him $100 million and hopefully multiple Super Bowls in the era of Caleb Williams. And that just so happens to be. And I heard someone say that says, unfortunately for Justin Fields, one of the biggest reasons why the Bears traded him away is because Justin Fields, where he is right now, is where Caleb Williams's floor is. Like
Mhm.
that's the type of conversation it's going. Like, you can hope for Justin Fields to get to that level, but Caleb Williams is already at this level that we saw from Fields last year. In the terms of passing, obviously they're different athletes, but yeah, it's
No, I totally get what you're saying, and I completely agree. The thing I'm grateful for is that we've seen in the past where teams ruin a player before moving on from him. I'm glad that the Bears didn't ruin Justin Fields. Yes, you guys made some changes to his game that he didn't agree with and he didn't like. But so far, from what I've seen and from what he's said, he's been able to revert back to his old style
yeah.
without missing a beat, which bodes well because now he can learn and grow while feeling more comfortable and more natural in his position. So that I am grateful for, that he wasn't just completely,
Luke
you know,
Getzey didn't completely
rash,
destroy him.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of his spirit, but luckily coming to a team like Pittsburgh with a storied history and a rabid fan base that if he is loyal to the team, they will be loyal to him.
Yeah.
I think that will bode well for his confidence, which was really one of the biggest things. Is he lacked a lot of confidence in Chicago just because he didn't know what his future was. He didn't know who his coaches were going to be. He didn't know this, didn't know that. It kind of felt like he was left out of the loop in Chicago because there was so much change in management throughout his early years.
I would
If
I would say from year 1 to 2 there was some doubt, and or just there was some question marks, and then pretty early in the process of off season number 2 it was, listen, we're not taking a quarterback, we're gonna get you a bunch of picks and we're gonna get you,
Mhm.
DJ Moore. And I think this was kind of the only year where it was like, listen, like, we
Yeah.
don't want to do this, we have to, like, this type of player and this type of prospect simply doesn't come around very
Mhm.
often. We love you. And, like, I think Fields knew that. And again, when we heard him speak at his locker at OTAs for the Steelers, he was like, listen, like, they completely did right by me by
Yep.
moving me to the place that I wanted to be. It was no ill intent. They knew that they were going down this direction,
Mhm.
and they put me in a spot that I wanted to be in. And so both organizations looked at him and said, you know what, we're giving you to a opportunity that is probably going to be good for you. Again,
Yep.
knock on
Well,
wood, knock on wood.
and it was the opportunity he wanted, because as he said, as we've discussed, it was his words, the place I wanted to be. Like, I can't be in Chicago anymore, which is where I truly did want to be. But if I can't be in Chicago,
This is
at
where,
least let me be in Pittsburgh.
yeah.
And so that is great for me as well. And that's going to endear him to so many of the fans, and I just hope that we don't have any situations where we get the friggin' try hard fans. If he does have a game early on where he has a bit of a struggle, I don't want to see the boo birds come out. Like last year, yeah, boo the shit out of that team because Matt Canada was fucking trash. And we were sick of Matt Canada. And that was just it. I think some of the players were feeling that because the boos were so often and so free, like there's so much of it. It wasn't directed at the players, but because you're wearing the jersey and you're out there on the field, you're still gonna feel that. It's still gonna hit you. Even though all those boos were for Matt Canada and the Rooney family and not firing Matt Canada. It's like, fucking get rid of this guy. His crayons are ruining our culture.
It's hilarious how both of our teams last year had offensive coordinators who drew up their plays with crayons. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Right. At least now I've got one that uses pencil crayon, so it's a slight upgrade. It's still color coded, but he can. I hope it's better. I hope it has to be. It can't possibly be worse than Matt Canada. Like, statistically, you look at it, he is the worst offensive coordinator ever. Like,
uh
it's got to be better. It's got to be better.
but
And
then
I'm
again,
happy to
it's
see
it's
that
it's Arthur Smith who the entire season, not just me but you as well,
we both
many
were. Yep.
times were calling for his job, saying he's one of the worst play callers in football
Yep.
and utilizing players. And I get it, you have to show a little bit of hope for him because he's your
You do.
offensive coordinator. But I know for
Yep.
a fact in the back of your mind you're going, please God, please God, please God.
Well, and honestly, seeing what happened with the Atlanta Falcons through the draft this year makes me sit back and go, okay, I think a part of that was dysfunctional organization. There were no checks and balances there. Arthur Smith was let allowed to just reign supreme and do what he wanted, which was a detriment to the team. He's not going to get away with that in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin will slap the taste out of his mouth if he tries to do that. We've seen it before. Mike Tomlin does not fuck around.
Yeah,
So
it's
that
gonna be
that is the
really
hope.
interesting.
It
It's
is. It is. And the fact that we've heard them come out and talk, and even if Justin doesn't win the starting job, there is a lot of discussion of we're not keeping him off the field. He will be out there in some capacity. I sent you a video that I know made you cringe. I could just feel it through the app where he was taking running back drills, which, I mean, you look at him in his time in Chicago, he basically was an extra running back. He was running the ball so much. And going from Chicago to the AFC North, yes, the NFC North is a physical division, but there is no division as physical as the AFC North.
Yeah,
And
you,
I
you
think
and
they
I
looked
have
at him and they
said
were like,
about this a couple times where the NFC North, it's gentlemanly warfare, while the
yes,
AFC North, it's trench warfare.
It's Fight Club.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Fight Club in the AFC North, and I think that's what they did. They were like, yeah, like don't worry, we're not moving you to running back, but you're gonna get hit a lot. So we need to make sure you can hold the ball when you get hit. So go out there and get hit. You know,
Yeah.
and there's been a lot of talks if like short yardage situations, red zone situations. It's looking and sounding like Justin Fields is going to be the quarterback in those areas. You know, we saw the last 2 seasons, Russell Wilson really struggled in the red zone. He was not able to get anything going. And so if that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers feel like they need to do and it wins us games, I'll be fine with it. You know, let Russ march the ball down the field, give it to Justin Fields and go, okay, get us the last 12 yards, score that touchdown. Fine
Yeah.
by me.
And since we've been talking a ton about the Steelers, one of the things that instead of doing the fantasy talk that we've been doing the last couple of weeks, we're gonna start our divisions kind of conversation, and we're not. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each division and we're going to be doing the AFC this week, and we are going to go which teams we think are going to be number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're going to kind of have that discussion. We're not going to do any of the records because that's going to take a lot of time to go through every single week and go win, and it's just going to be too much of a pain in the ass. So we're simply going to do just kind of where we think each team is going to win in this division. Again, this week we're starting off with the Super Bowl winning division, the AFC, just because it's only right. So which division would you like to start with? Would you like to start with your division, or should we wait down the line for some of that?
Well, I've got that one at the bottom of my list. I've got the AFC East at the top of my list here.
Okay,
It was where I was thinking of starting.
so we can start with
Um,
the AFC East if you like.
yeah, and so as Brendan said, it's just going to be like 1 through where we think they're going to finish in the standings within their division, 1 through 4. Um, honestly, I think this year for the AFC East, it's the Dolphins' division to lose. The Bills definitely took a hit in their talent throughout the roster on both sides of the ball. So I don't think they're going to be able to quite do that. And I'm still questioning how good Rodgers is going to be able to be on that surgically repaired Achilles, especially seeing him already limping around during OTAs on the other Achilles. So I have the Miami Dolphins at the top of my list for the AFC East.
Yeah, for myself, I also have the Miami Dolphins. I think this is just a team right now. That offense, you just have to think they're gonna get it going all together. And with every other team in that division right now, you just kind of look at it and go, it has to be Miami's year. And we saw them have a little bit of bumps and hurdles last year, and kind of the way that they go with McDaniels. I think he's a brilliant coach, and I think he's gonna get this team to that AFC East champions this year.
Yeah, and I have to say, Tua looks good. Like I know his wide receivers were poking fun at him
A little bit of
and
Ozempic.
on his Ozempic arc right now, but he looks good. You know, he dropped some of that extra weight that I think was limiting his mobility a little bit. And that could be really good for them. You know, if that allows him to escape a pass rush or two here or there and extend a few plays each game, that can only bode well when you've got a guy like Tyreek Hill who is so good at finding the open field if you can extend those plays. So yeah, the Dolphins for sure, I think, take that AFC East unless they have some sort of catastrophic injury that happens. The rest of the division for me shakes out 2, 3, 4. Buffalo Bills, New York Jets, I think are probably going to be interchangeable, probably finish with about the same record. And then the New England Patriots are going to be a basement team.
Yeah, for me, I have the Jets as number 2, I have the Bills as number 3, and then I have the Pats as a distant number 5. Because I'm sure there's going to be some college team that can slot themselves in there, and yeah. But Pats
Yeah.
number 4. Bills and Jets. I think the Jets are going to come out and surprise a lot more people this year. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to kind of revert back to that Aaron Rodgers of the past we've seen. I don't necessarily think he's going to be as good as Aaron Rodgers in the past, but this Jets team last year was still pretty good even without Aaron Rodgers. Their defense is Super Bowl caliber, in my opinion. They have a solid offense. They have one of the best young wide receivers in the league, and they have one of the best running backs just simply in the league. They upgraded their offensive line. They added a few more weapons. I love Malachi Corey in that offense. And for me, I just think if the Jets and Aaron Rodgers can get things going, they could be a surprisingly scary team in that AFC conference. And
Yep.
Bills, we all know they've taken a big down, a big hit. And Keon Coleman, I like him. Do I think he's going to necessarily be the top guy this year for a rookie wide receiver? I don't. But that team has just it's kind of like what happens in Madden if you kind of go all out for a couple years and then it's just a bunch of guys ultimately have to leave and you're just like, I don't have any money, so bye.
I'll go sign Mapletron.
Exactly. And
Come on, he's gonna get his chance to be the number one guy finally.
nope, he's currently not playing for the BC Lions, so apparently that league started yesterday.
Yep, it did. But no, I mean he is on the Bills, and Josh Allen has said he's enjoying working with him in OTAs. So
Yep.
he might end up landing himself a roster spot still in the NFL somehow.
Yep. Justin Fields said the exact same thing last offseason where he said,
Oh, don't worry. I fully expect it to not work out.
as both of us have been burned by Senior Claypool, where we're just going like,
Rip.
yeah.
But at the same time, being Canadian boys, I would like to see him succeed still. He's sort of relegated himself to where we used to have the Detroit Lions and where I still have the Browns and the Jets in the, you got to prove it to me before I'm going to believe in you.
At this point, I looked at Claypool and I said, when he got traded to the Bears from the Steelers, I said, this is really his last shot because he fizzled out quickly with Pittsburgh. He's going to a team that at that point didn't have the weapons, and he had that half a season where he was going to be the number one guy, and he was saying, I'm a number one wide receiver. I'm a number one guy. It's like, all right, this is your opportunity. Like, you have a young quarterback who's talented, and everyone's just begging for him to get a number one guy. If you say you're number one guy, this is your opportunity. DJ Moore comes in, and it's like, okay, well, you're going to be a number two, if not a number three behind Darnell Mooney. Like you lost your opportunity that damn quickly. You didn't even play 12 games for the Bears before they said, go away. We don't want you anymore. And
I know.
And for me,
we thought that was his last shot, but he here he is on his fourth chance, his last shot, because then he had his try with the Dolphins, and now the Bills have brought him back. Like, I don't know.
It's
like
going to be interesting.
I'd like to see the Canadian boy succeed, so if he can do it, then great. I will give him the props. I will be happy. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. And for Patriots, obviously, they are the New England Patriots, and I would not be shocked if they are, again, a top 3 pick in next year's draft.
They're fully in rebuild mode right now, which we knew was going to happen. Like they were able to limp along for a little while after the Tom Brady era, but they finally accepted the fact that it's time to do the full rebuild. Because they came crashing down harder than any other team we've seen lately with a franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
The only other one that, might be close to resembling that sort of crash is the Denver Broncos. After Peyton Manning, it sort of fell apart, but it's kind of it. It's time for the Patriots to rebuild.
Yeah, and obviously they drafted Drake May, and I said the Patriots should just avoid not even drafting a quarterback, find someone else. And again, I think if the Patriots keep Drake May off the field and just let Jacoby Brissett get his brains bashed in a little bit, unfortunately, just be bad, and get him a top 3 pick next year and just do this, that, and the other thing, that's going to be so much better for him than anything else. But next division, which one would you like to go for?
Oh, you're cool there.
Let's go with the AFC South, and For me, it's a pretty easy runaway for the Texans, in my opinion. Year two, C.J. Stroud, I think he's only going to be getting better than what we saw.
Mhm.
Obviously, adding Stephon Diggs, second year in the offense with, I believe it's Kubiak, or it might not be Kubiak. I forget their offensive coordinator's name, but he's in the fact that he still didn't get a head coaching job is insane this year.
Yeah.
But an extra year in that offense, it's going to be scary, man. It's going to be scary.
Yeah, and we agree it is the Houston Texans up there at the number one spot in this AFC South division. I do still think the Jaguars are going to be good enough to challenge them for that, but I think the Texans will be ready to rise to that challenge. The Jags are still a good team. They've still got a lot of young talent, and they just they stumbled when they had their opportunity to take this division and make it theirs. And now the Texans are back after 2 years, like 3 years of being the worst team. Now all of a sudden they're the best team in that division.
Yeah. For me, I have the Jags as number two. I think they are probably the second best team that's going to be able to compete. I am less optimistic about the Jags than you are. I think the Jags are a very distant second in this division compared to the Texans. And I think the Texans, they're going to walk out of this division and say to not just their division, but to the entire conference, like, listen, we are competing. Everyone else that's been saying the Bills and the Bengals and the Chiefs, you better add our name now because we are here. And I think the Jags, they're gonna kind of be the redheaded stepchild of this division
Yeah.
of where they're good, but they're just gonna constantly be beaten down by the super athlete that now is the Texans.
Yeah, and I think the Jags will be good enough to fight for a wild card spot near the end of the season. But yeah, it's going to be real tough for them to win that division. I think the Texans have that on lock already at this point. And then closing out that division, I think Colts Titans 3-4. Colts have more talent around on that team. They're still, I mean, even last year that they surprised a lot of people and they were still sort of in the run near the end of the season. Whereas the Titans are just, it feels like the Titans are still grasping, trying to hang on and avoid rebuilding. Um, and they're just gonna ride that Will Levis train this
Yeah,
year. That they're gonna take that popularity. That's all it's gonna be. I don't think the Titans are gonna really impress any.
they're just gonna grab onto Will Levis.
Yeah,
Yep. If you
yeah.
don't understand that joke, just Google Will Levis. Um, and but yeah, I agree.
Oh,
The Colts, they are my team number three in this one, and I'm like I've said before, I'm extremely worried about Anthony Richardson, man. If he does not make another season,
mhm.
the Colts are going to be bad because they don't have Gardner Minshew. I don't know who their backup QB is, but I don't think it's anyone that's going to be anything super talented, and I don't think it's a guy that's going to be able to just get them through a couple of these wins throughout the year, and it's just going to be really, really tough for him. And yeah, I think Colts are in three, Titans are in four. As much as we love Will Levis,
Okay. I will throw this out there real quick. If Richardson goes down, the current backup in Indianapolis is Joe Flacco.
okay, never mind.
We saw what he was able to do off the couch in
In
Cleveland.
Cleveland,
Who
yeah,
knows?
yep,
Who
okay,
knows?
yep, so yeah,
But either way, it's still third place for them in that division. Those
it,
other two teams are just too good and too talented all around to really falter. I mean, unless the Jags go through that same injury issue they had last year, then who knows? They could fall all the way to the fourth place spot in that division if it gets bad enough.
I don't think the Jags will fall to the fourth place even with like repeating some of that injury stuff. I think the Titans are a bottom five team this year,
Yeah.
and as much as again we love Will Levis because of it's just yeah I the team is just too broken in my opinion. They just don't have a lot, and
Yeah.
it's yeah it's not much more
It's
you can
going to
really
be
say.
hard in Tennessee this year.
uh, let's move over
Um,
to
so
you pick
moving
the
to the
next one.
AFC West, this is probably the easiest one to pick the number one team for anything.
Denver
And that's
Broncos.
Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What did you piss your mom off? Are you trying to get some brownie points there?
Fuck no, I cooked her dinner last night, so I'm in the good books. Um, no,
No,
it's the Chiefs. It's
it is.
the Chiefs are the number one team in the entire NFL right now, in my opinion. They're the Super Bowl champions. They
There, yeah,
automatically get the number one spot, and you know what? They got better this offseason. They
they did.
got better,
Yeah,
and you can't not have the Chiefs winning this division until
exactly.
Patrick Mahomes either falls off of a cliff or retires. The Chiefs are always going to be the team that is placed at the top of that division. I have picked the Chiefs to not win the division once in the Patrick Mahomes era, and it had bitten me in the ass aggressively. That's the year when the Chargers traded for
Yeah,
Khalil Mack and they went all in. I said it's going to be the Chargers this year, and
we both did,
look at how well that worked out. They won
right?
the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
And then the year
And
after, they won the Super Bowl again.
yep.
And
And then, I mean, looking at the rest of that division, it's, hot garbage piled on top of hot garbage. For me, I've got the number two team there being the Las Vegas Raiders because their defense, I think, is going to be the thing that keeps them in games this year. Their defense got so much better this offseason, and it was already one of the best. Um, if they can figure out the quarterback situation and not go with what's his name that I can't even remember and can't hit Devonte Adams for three damn passes,
Aiden O'Connell.
Aiden O'Connell, and they
Yeah.
go with Minshew instead, then they have a good shot. They could be a competitive team in the AFC if they roll with Minshew from week one. If you put Aiden O'Connell in there, then you're going to be fighting with the Chargers and the Broncos for fourth place. But as it stands, with that defense, I do think the Raiders are going to be able to hold on to the second place in the AFC West.
Yeah, I also have the Raiders. I like Antonio Pierce as their head coach. I think he was the right guy for that job. Even though I don't like defensive minded head coaches, for me, I looked at him and said he earned that job last year when he became the interim, and he
Mhm.
beat Kansas City in Kansas City. I was like, he deserves that job. Pardon me as I sneeze.
Yeah, the scary part is who they decide to bring in as their offensive coordinator, who you are extremely familiar with from last season. It's Captain Crayon and Luke Getzey. And
Yeah,
that's where my concern with him going with Aiden O'Connell is, because he's going to look at Aiden O'Connell and go, well, he's nobody. I can make him do whatever I want. Whereas Gardner Minshew is going to go, no, I'm throwing the ball to Devontae, and if you don't draw that up, then I'm going to fuck your mom.
he's Uncle Rico is what he is.
He,
He's gonna throw
yeah,
a steak at you.
yeah, exactly. That I could totally see Minshew just at training camp, just sitting there on the bench, being like, "Bet you I could throw a ball over those mountains."
Like he's like just in a preseason game, he's just sitting back, sitting beside Devontae. I bet you I can
Right?
throw a ball out of the stadium.
Yeah.
And
Want to see me throw a ball over the sphere?
Devontae just looks over at him and goes, "Are you high as shit right now?" Yeah,
Okay, I guess it's not that much different than playing with Aaron Rodgers,
exactly.
right?
But
Who knows? We could see a magical connection begin with the two of them if they make the right move and play Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew has proven time and time again he has the weapons to be able to be a starter. He To me, he is the next Ryan Fitzpatrick, where at some point you gotta give him that shot being the starter. And Fitzpatrick was good as a starter. He was able to get it done. He couldn't go all the way. I don't think Minshew has the ability to do that either, but you can keep your team good enough that other talent around the league looks and goes, yeah, I'll go play with the Raiders. You put Aiden O'Connell in there, and you're going to have guys they make some bad decisions, I don't know if I want to be there.
Yeah. Guys like
And
Ryan Fitzpatrick and Gardner Minshew, when we talk about a bridge quarterback, they are the guys that pop up in the dictionary with their pictures
prototype.
of it's exactly what you want. It's a guy that's good enough to win you games, but it's a guy that you are looking to replace, but the team is still good. And
Because yeah, like I look at the Raiders in a similar way of the Steelers. It's like, yeah, even with O'Connell in there, you're gonna be so bad, but your defense will be so good. They're still gonna win you enough games. You're not gonna get a good enough pick to get one of the best quarterbacks in the draft. And for me, if you're not gonna get a franchise, marquee player that's going to change your franchise, then you can't be playing to lose. If you're not going to be bad enough to get a top 3 pick, then you need to be trying to win
yeah,
every week. And that's where the Raiders are. They're not bad enough to be a bottom 3 team.
and when we talk about the additions that they made on defense, they made really one addition on defense where they got
But
Christian Wilkins alongside Max Crosby. We
mhm,
again, we know most Steelers fans thinks TJ Watt got robbed of the Defensive Player of the Year award. You're one of the few that thinks where you went, you know what, Max Crosby was the real deserving guy that should have won that year. And
yeah, most TJ Watt fans, I feel like it's not necessarily TJ Watt got robbed. It's more, why the hell was it? I'm forgetting his name.
Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett, like, because there were so many other players that were better, that deserved it more, in TJ Watt and Max Crosby especially.
Yeah,
And so that's the frustration, is it felt like it was just given to Myles Garrett as a pity award.
yeah, neither of us were terribly happy. But going back to kind of what you were saying about that, if the Raiders start Aiden O'Connell for the year, the Raiders this year are going to remind me so much of what the Steelers were last year, of where the defense is going to be so good and they're going to be able to keep them in games. They're genuinely going to be able to win them games, but the offense is going to be sitting back going like, "Duh, how do I play with my coloring book?" Like that's what
Well,
the Steelers
yeah,
offense was last year.
yep, yeah.
And
Mitch Trubisky and Matt Canada is, the new version of that is Aiden O'Connell and Luke Getsy.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's that's what I can see the Raiders being if they have Aiden O'Connell. But Gardner Minshew, I've been saying it for a while, of just you just got to start him. He's the more experienced guy. He's played a lot of games. Why not have him go there? He had a sneaky good year last year. It's not like he was going to be, an all-star or anything, but he was still a good quarterback. But we could sit here talking about the Raiders for the next hour. For me, team number 3 in this AFC West division is the Chargers, in my opinion.
Yep.
I think they're going to be a lot better than what they were last year. I do. I think them adding Joe Alt gives them one of the best tackle duos in the entire league in Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater. With Justin Herbert out there, he's going to be protected.
Hmm.
I'm a little concerned with what they're doing with their in terms of weapons. The guy that they got in the second round, I'm forgetting who it is, but you know, if I fully remember who it is, but I know I'd like the move in the second round. I might as well just look that up here.
Yeah,
But
they're kind of in that cap hell position right now, unfortunately for them too. I don't think they're going to be better than last season, but I think they're going to keep Justin Herbert safer. And right now for this team, I think that kind of needs to be the goal, is they need to keep Herbert healthy for a year. That way next year, maybe they can make some moves and make the team better. Because right now it's just, they're hanging on to the edge of a cliff, trying to claw their way back up. And
this
it
is a
could
team
very
that
easily
has
get there.
it has written like 7 and 10 across the board. To me, that is what this team is, which is better than what they were last year. They have an
Yeah.
absolute nut job as a coach, so they might end up winning 8 games this season. But I don't think it's going to be enough to go over the Raiders again. I like Lad McConkey. I know they drafted Brendan Rice and another wide receiver in the draft. Still, you're putting a lot of hope in 3
This
rookies.
Yeah, this is a build and hope year for the Chargers. I think 7 wins is a stretch myself, even for them. But
I give 7 wins to Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh. That's what I really give it to.
fair, yeah, that's fair, and it is possible. Yeah, this Chargers team, after 2 years of us talking about them being a potential candidate to upset the Chiefs and take that position from them, and they just let us down over and over. Now they've lost all their weapons. Justin Herbert had a rough year last year, hurt. It's they just got to save face this year and try to stay healthy, and grow some of that youthful receiver core that they have. So
Yeah,
we'll see what
and
happens there. And then the Broncos are gonna be the Broncos. Um, they'll somehow be worse this year while watching the Steelers be better with a quarterback that they're paying for.
there's not much to say with the Broncos. They don't really have much of an offense. Cortland Sutton hasn't really been much of anything these last couple of years. Marvin Mims I like, but he didn't show me enough. Torrey Franklin, he's a good
Mhm.
receiver, but he's a rookie. Bo Nix, the biggest thing with Bo Nix, I said, was he's going to be a good, constant quarterback in the NFL, but he's never going to be great. He's never going to be elite. And when you're in a division with Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes, you need a Justin Herbert or a Patrick Mahomes to
Yeah.
compete. And it's just unfortunate because they're looking at it going like, this is the best we have. This is literally all we have. And they are in kind of cap hell, pick hell. And
Yep.
obviously, after that Russell Wilson debacle, and
They sold their soul for Russell Wilson, and it did not work out for them.
yeah, there's no way you can really put. I don't think the Broncos are going to be a bottom 5 team. I think they're going to be into that 7 to 8 range of worst teams, but they're just going to constantly be on the outside of it, where there's going to be Broncos fans that are going to be really frustrated because the team is just good enough to not be a bottom 5, but they're going to
Hmm.
be not good enough to get out of anything else. And you know what's funny is that 2 years ago, when we talked about the Chiefs being behind the Chargers, we were also talking about this division being the best division in football with the 4
Yep.
quarterbacks. And Russell Wilson, we genuinely talked about it being, there could be a situation where all 4 of these teams make it to the playoffs, because there is 7-team playoff now, and they all get the 3 wild card spots. And now
Hmm.
look at it. It's like the Chiefs and who else?
Right? And I mean, if the Chargers had the skill and the talent, they would still be talked about in there. But right now, all three of those other teams are they're trying to find what their future is going to look like. Whereas the Chiefs are looking and going, our future is three-peat.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't even think they're necessarily just thinking three-peat. They
No,
might
they're
be
not.
thinking
But
4.
that's why the Chiefs have been so good for so long, is they're not looking at the 2025 season
Yep.
or the 2026 season.
They're
Looking at this
today.
they're always looking at now, which is why they stay so good, because they don't worry about what's going to happen later. They don't worry about what contract they're going to have to sign, who's going to replace Tyreek Hill, who's going to replace Travis Kelce. They don't worry about that. They worry about winning now, and that is why they've stayed so good.
So now over to the AFC North, your division, like what we said with the NFC North, where it's gentlemanly warfare. AFC North is trench warfare, where it's bare knuckle boxing. It is Fight Club. Who do you have winning your division? And why is it the
Winning the
Cleveland
division in
Browns?
the AFC North comes with the caveat that he stays healthy, the Cincinnati Bengals. If Joe Burrow can play all 17 games, then the Cincinnati Bengals will win this division.
Yeah, I also have the Bengals at the top of the division. I have been saying this year, I think Joe Burrow is going to go out and have a special year. If
I'm
if
I'm
he
less
stays healthy.
confident. Yeah, I'm only less confident because of that new turf that they installed in Cincinnati, which is the same turf that has been claiming Achilles around the league for the last 4 seasons.
at
It is
MetLife.
not good.
Yep, but
Not just MetLife. There's a couple other stadiums that have it as well now, and Cincinnati is the most recent.
I
And
I agree with you. But for me, there's just something inside of me that just says
Mhm.
the Cincinnati Bengals are going to have a special year, and it's going to be led by Joe Burrow.
and that has been the trend of his career so far is injury season, lights out season. Injury season, lights out season. And so we're on track for him to have a amazing season this year and then likely miss next year with the way his career has gone. Um the rest of this division I expect us to disagree on.
Because you have the Browns at number 2.
I do have the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 2, yes. As much as I'm sure you disagree with that. I just like I've said time and again, we look at where that Steelers team finished with Matt Canada calling the plays, Kenny Pickett running an inefficient offense, Mitch Trubisky running an inefficient offense. It was bad. The defense is what kept us in games. The defense won several games. If we can get Russell Wilson to put up the exact same numbers as he did in Denver last year, this Pittsburgh Steelers team is a guaranteed 10-win team, if not potential for an 11. And so that for me, like right now, I look at it and I think they're going to finish second because that defense is still going to win those 3 to 5 games for them, but the offense is going to be able to win more than just the 5 games that they were able to pull out last year. And it's and I know people are going to be looking at me going, well, what about the Ravens? You got Lamar Jackson there, you got Derrick Henry, and it's like, yeah, but after that, it's question marks and returning from injuries. So yeah, we got Derrick Henry there, but this isn't prime Derrick Henry. He's going to be good. The Ravens are going to be good. I think the Steelers and Ravens likely end with a similar record. And whoever wins the tiebreak between them is the one that ends up in that 2 seed. I just think it will be Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think the Steelers and Ravens are going to have very similar records this year. I think the Ravens are going to edge them out. For me right now with the Steelers, it's going. You are just again, you're playing the game of mediocrity to me,
Mhm.
and until you prove otherwise, I have to go with the team that at least over the last couple years has been a little bit more consistently better. And with
That's
having
cool.
Lamar Jackson there, the 2-time MVP, with that
Mhm.
offense is what it is. It gives me a little bit more confidence. But again, it's not like I'm putting the Ravens above the Steelers and going like the Ravens have 5 more wins than the Steelers. It's a 1-win difference, if not the same record. Like to
Yeah.
me, that's what both of these teams are. I think the Bengals walk away with the division. I think they're going to have probably a 2, maybe even a 3-game lead over number 2. But yeah, it's the Ravens and Steelers, very very close. But a lot of things that you say, I can agree with. But
Yep.
I just have just that little bit more confidence with the Ravens here at this point.
Yeah, and I understand that. I fully expected that. I'm a little surprised you even had the Steelers at 3 because I remember last year you had them sitting at 4 in that division. I expected you to have them in the same spot this year, just like everybody else has. It's been, I think, 4 or 5 years in a row now where every year everybody's like, oh, Pittsburgh's going to be the worst team in this division. They've not been the worst team in their division since 1988. Like it doesn't happen in Pittsburgh. It will eventually. I
Yes.
do admit it will eventually happen again. But I feel like it's going to be a very obvious glaring issue when that does happen.
Yeah.
And I don't see that obvious issue right now. I look at the Steelers and they got better this year in 90% of their positions, including secondary. They got better at that secondary position. It is still lacking, but they went out and they closed that gap a little bit this week in their signing of Cameron Sutton, bringing him back from Detroit after they drafted him in Pittsburgh, and he had several years there, and they were happy with him. Pittsburgh wanted to keep Sutton, but they didn't want to pay him as much as he wanted. He wanted a big contract. Detroit gave him a $35 million contract, and he only lasted one season.
Yeah, and
That was due to that. Well, it was due to some
off-field issues.
off-field issues, some legal troubles that were happening, and that was ultimately what caused his downfall there. So I have to believe, I hope that all of that is resolved now. He's going to come back to Pittsburgh. He's going to fight for that number 2 spot with Dante Jackson, and at least we've got a more solid 2-3 sitting there now than we had before. So I look at the Steelers, they got better this year, and that's why I think they will be the ones that edge out the Ravens, because the Ravens got better at running back, but that was kind of it. Everything else fell off a little bit. We saw some of the red flags and the problems with the young wide receivers they have in Baltimore, which has been a common issue for that team over the last decade. You know, it sort of mirrors, these two teams mirror each other so much, Pittsburgh and Baltimore, and the way they build teams. And I think Pittsburgh has the edge this year, especially being able to steal a guy away from the Ravens. That sort of adds a bit of an edge to that fight when they go head to head this year, those two times. I think it's going to be even more physical than usual, and I cannot wait for Patrick Queen and Derrick Henry to meet in that gap.
Yeah,
that's going to be fun.
And to go back to what you were saying about me, you thought that I was going to have them at 4. Last year, the real only reason that I had them at 4 is because I thought the Browns were going to be better. I looked at their team last year; they were easily more consistent, and we didn't realize at that point Deshaun Watson had completely was gone from football. And I know you're gonna say you had that thought of like you were, but that was more of a hope than more than anything. And now it's kind of official of going like, okay, Deshaun Watson really just doesn't have it at this point. And if you remember, we go back to that point last year, I said for me the reason why I have the Steelers 4th as opposed to the Browns being 4th is because I trust the Browns offense more than I trust the Steelers offense. That was the only reason. And now that we know what the Browns offense is, we're kind of looking at it going like, okay, I still don't like the Steelers offense, but I like their offense a hell of a lot more than a Deshaun Watson led Browns offense.
Yeah, I get that completely. And to be fair, what I was actually going to say was, if Nick Chubb hadn't gone down with that injury, the Browns would have finished second in that division. The loss of Nick Chubb was what ultimately hurt the Browns the most last season, in my opinion. I knew going in Deshaun Watson wasn't going to be anything special. I know a lot of people were hyped on him still. I don't see that spark in him anymore. But really, if they can find a quarterback in Cleveland, then they've still got the ability. They got Amari Cooper there. They got Jerry Jeudy now. I don't think Nick Chubb will be back. I don't think he should. Honestly, having that same knee repaired twice, it might be time to hang it up and walk away just for your own peace of mind, unless you want to end up in a wheelchair the rest of your life. Like if
he's not already heading that way anyways.
Right. Well, I mean, he's been there at Browns OTAs, and talking like he's wanting to play this season. It won't be week 1, that's for damn sure. But he's talking like he wants to come back. We saw what Joe Flacco was able to do with that offense, though.
Yep.
And that's what it is. They're lacking a quarterback.
They're a quarterback away.
The Browns have lacked their entire existence is a quarterback. They have fielded, I think, the most quarterbacks of any franchise. They've fielded more quarterbacks than they've had seasons in the league. And that is their problem. They cannot find the guy that will lead them to the promised land.
But hey, at least they have a quarterback that has over 4,000 passing yards in a single season.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
That's very, very true. Yeah.
Where's that?
You might finally get that eventually. One of these years. Give it another 5 or 10 years, maybe it'll happen.
No, this year.
But yeah, I mean, I'm glad you don't have the Steelers down at 4th, because I do think they improved this year. Matt Canada being gone is likely the biggest improvement for them. So yeah, 2-3, that shuffle there, I really do think it's going to be who wins those head-to-heads. You
Yeah,
know,
and when it
that
comes to that, it like what I said, I don't think it's a
yeah.
monster.
No.
Again, it's realistically going to be the exact same record. It's just going to be who got that extra field goal.
No, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be that 3-game stretch in December for Pittsburgh that kills them against the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Chiefs.
Yeah.
You know, if they can take 2 of 3 there, then they can finish second place in that division. If they only win 1 of the 3 or none of them, then that's where they land in third place. Either way, I still think all 3 of those teams are playoff teams.
Oh, without a
Yeah,
doubt. Like
yeah,
here's the thing: the Browns were a playoff team last year. They
they were.
didn't get worse. The only thing, like what you're saying, is that the only thing they're missing is a quarterback. Like I'm talking about this AFC North division in a high regard of like the
Yeah,
Browns could still be a 10-win team. They had the coach of the year last year. They
yep.
still have one of the best defenses, and as much as neither of us like it, they had the defensive player of the year last year. And
That defense, however,
it
fell off a lot by the end of the season. They started strong. They
they were
were
tired. They were tired.
yes, and I think they're going to run into the same situation this year because it is. They got tired because they didn't have a guy like Nick Chubb to run
Help
the
them.
ball and draw out those offensive drives. They still don't have that. And so I think they're going to run into that situation much earlier in the year this year.
Yeah, but in my
Yeah.
opinion, they are still a 10-win team. They can get 10 wins. If
I
Deshaun
don't think
Watson
they
can
will.
play if Deshaun Watson can play at a semi-competent level this year, there's no reason to say they can't be a 10-win team.
Yeah, but that's a very big if. I don't see that happen.
True,
The
but
best case
we also
scenario
didn't
for
think
them.
Joe Flacco coming in was going to do what he did.
No, we didn't. But I mean, that to me shows how much Watson has fallen off. The fact that Joe Flacco could come off the couch, eating his potato chips, and turn that Browns team around in that fashion when Deshaun Watson couldn't even get himself off the massage table long enough to throw enough touchdowns to win a damn game. Their best option in Cleveland is just cut Deshaun Watson and pray to the gods that Dorian Thompson Robinson can stay healthy and do something because he looked good. He just got hurt, and that's just it. If he can stay healthy, that could be their future. The Browns just keep shooting themselves in the foot,
They
and
do.
they need to stop. That is the only way they're ever going to succeed and stop being a laughing stock. They had one good year in their entire existence, and that's it. And since then, every year, everybody's like, "Oh, they're going to be really good again this year. Shot to win the division." Not this year, obviously, but even up to last year, everybody was like, they could win this division. And for me, I don't see it. I get, yes, because I'm a Steelers fanboy, I'm going to be lower on them. But at the same time, I look at it as I see them more often and I scout them more often and I game plan for them more often. And so I see where their holes are and where their problems are more than your average fan of other teams outside of this AFC North division. So yes, I'm a hater because I'm a Steelers fan, but I also dissect that Browns team just like I do with the Bengals, just like I would do with the Ravens. And I see where their issues are. That's why I am so confident every year when people are like, the Browns are going to be the best or the Steelers are going to be the worst. And I can confidently say, and have been right 95% of the time, that no, the Browns will be the basement team. The Steelers will be better. I don't think this year we're talking about the AFC North having the potential of 4 teams making the playoffs. I think Bengals, Steelers, Ravens, yes. I don't think the Browns are going to crack that 500 mark, which for us now is 8-9/9-8.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit higher just because of or because of that defense and because Stefanski is a brilliant coach. But yeah, other than that, I can pretty much agree wholeheartedly with you in a lot of the things that you're saying. But yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to say the least. as I continue to sneeze because of allergies. It is terrible right now in the city that we're at.
The
And
poplar trees are
oh,
just going nuts right now in this city. It is crazy.
it is
Like there's been
horrible.
days where it looks like it's snowing. There's so much fluff in the air.
It is absolutely terrible, and I can't wait for it to be over. But yeah,
You know what
next
I
week.
can't wait to be over? The off season.
Oh yeah, I'm ready for
We're
football.
I think we're just about TJ Watt number of days away. Just about at that 90-day mark until the season kicks off. Can't fucking wait.
It's yeah. Neither can I. I just want to see Caleb Williams play in a Chicago Bears uniform, and I finally
Right?
get to see it. But
I,
it's
I want to see riots in Brazil because there's two teams wearing all green playing in the stadium where green is banned.
again that whole thing of like announcing that it's going to be those two teams and then immediately following, the host city is going to go, oh yeah, but they can't actually wear their jerseys. They have to choose
Right?
completely different jerseys because our rival team that is we all hate is that's their color, and so we're not allowing you to wear it. It's just like, well, then why did you choose these two teams?
Right? There's only 3 teams in the NFL where their primary color is green, and they chose 2 of the 3 teams to play in that game. And we talk about NFL fans being, rabid fans and being, really diehard and aggressive and
Oh
shit, but they're they look like little babies compared to soccer fans, man. Because like soccer fans, you will get stabbed for wearing the wrong color in a soccer stadium and shit. Like you might see a fist fight break out at like a Ravens Steelers game or a Patriots Bills game, stuff like that. You might see a fist fight, but you're not gonna see inanimate objects and weapons being pulled and people literally having to be stretchered out because they're near death. Like soccer fans are insane in how aggressive and violent they get when they see their opposing team's color.
yeah, there's a thing in Scotland, in Glasgow, where my family's from, where it's the Celtics versus Rangers. That game is basically, if you are not a fan of one of those teams, it's just like, just don't go to it because it's a death sentence in Glasgow. If you know anything about that city, it's a hard city. It's an aggressive city, and when those two go together, it's the Catholics versus the Protestants, and then they meet together to go watch a soccer match, and it's just death. It is death, 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 and it is like, again, soccer fans are a different breed.
Yeah.
We will never diss soccer fans because the passion that they have for it, the chants that they have during the games are hilarious. I wish the NFL fans would bring those over because it genuinely is pretty great. But yeah, the fact that they went down that road of just going like, okay, we know we can't have green jerseys in this game. Let's have the Eagles and the Green Bay Packers go and play.
Right?
It's in
I
the
wonder if we're even
fucking
gonna have to
name.
censor that name.
Like, honestly,
The censor bar Bay Packers.
the
Yeah, just ludicrous to me. And I mean, I've seen the NFL put out a statement where they said that no, that's not the case. They are going to be able to wear their team colors. They're recommending the fans maybe not wear their team colors outside of the stadium. Maybe bring it in a bag and put it on once you're inside the arena because it'll be safe at that point. But I mean, the fact that you want to have a game here and you're talking about, oh, we need to transport the players in armored vehicles for their safety. And it's like, do we really is it really the time to be having games and a team in Brazil? Like maybe just stick to Mexico City where they don't have to be in armored vehicles to get to the arena. Like I get it. They want to expand to other continents, to other countries, but maybe pick ones where the players aren't going to get shot.
yeah, yeah, and
Like
it's not for any other reason than you're wearing our enemy's colors. Pew pew.
right?
It's
Yeah.
like it's nothing that they did. It's just these players were
I,
just drafted to teams or signed with a team that
mhm.
happens to have a little bit of green.
Yeah. And I couldn't even find a Packers jersey that doesn't have some green in it.
Yeah.
I at least found an Eagles one. The Eagles had
Yeah.
their tribute to the troops jersey, the brown. And I was like, okay, the Eagles have a brown jersey, could do that. But the Packers, I was looking and I was like, even their like whiteout jerseys still have green stripping and stuff on it. Like they're gonna have to make all new jerseys if they decide to go that direction. But like I said, the NFL did come out with a statement after what Josh Jacobs said, and we're like, no, that's not the case. We talked it over with the officials. We are allowed to have the green jerseys there. So we'll see what happens as we get closer to the season and whether that's truly the case. But
Gonna be an
just bonehead
absolute
move.
mess.
You had 29 other teams you could have had go there. Like why wouldn't you have done like Cowboys and Giants? And I was like, there, it's all blue and white. No green at all.
You could have had the Chiefs being
Yeah.
red, not very similar color to green, versus let's say the Raiders, black and white.
Yep.
But
I
no,
know.
we're gonna choose two teams that have green. The
Yep.
only way it could have actually have been worse if it was the Packers versus the Jets.
Yeah.
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 That is literally the only way it could have been worse. At least the Eagles, it's not really fully green. There's like more accents of greens and this type of stuff.
You
With the
read it's
Jets,
almost like that teal green. So,
yeah, with the Jets, it's full green, and with the Packers, it's green and yellow. It's like, okay, guys, like, what are we doing?
It's NFL all over.
Yeah.
Well, hey,
No
at least we
words.
managed to get a little bit of a rant street in there. Been a while.
Just because of how it's not even something where we're angry about. We're just looking at it, laughing, going like, really, like you couldn't have had two other teams, and it's not like they're the most marketable teams out there. Like,
No.
again, they're two teams that have very passionate fan bases. They are, but in terms of when you go out to a city on the West Coast and you go up to a fan and go, "Oh, you're an NFL fan? Yeah. Oh, like which team are you a fan of?" They're gonna typically talk about a lot of the West Coast teams, or if they do talk about a different team, it's gonna be something like the Steelers, or it's gonna be the Cowboys. Some of those more super popular teams. And when it comes to the Packers, it's either you're kind of from that Midwest kind of area, and with the Eagles, it's kind of like you're kind of that in that similar thing of where you're part of that region, and you don't really see a lot of fans outside of those regions. So,
No, not really.
but hey,
Yeah.
I still find it really funny that the NFL basically looked at Germany and said, we're going to give you the Giants versus the Panthers, and the caption was, "This is revenge for World War II."
Yeah.
Where I was just like,
Oh
okay,
my God.
like
The Giants. Oh, don't get me started. I think we could have a winless team this,
yep.
and it's not the Panthers.
I'd be okay if it was the Panthers. Like that would give us
No,
that would give the Bears the 33rd pick in the draft.
right? No, I get you. They'll be bad. You'll
Yep.
still have the 34th pick in the
I
draft.
hope so.
Yeah. But I think the Giants will be the worst. But we'll get into the NFC rankings next week a little bit more with the
Yeah,
NFC
there's
divisions and where we think the teams will land out there.
yeah, but that is all for today. This has been a nice, fun one. Just snap, 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 go, 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 and some very congested Brendan. But for Sterling, I'm Brendan saying peace.